Let's turn our attention to the situation between Russia and Ukraine. Rendezvous are still ongoing at the United Nations headquarters in New York over the Belgorod plane crash that saw no survivors. Russian authorities claim that the plane was carrying 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war, 6 Russian crew members and 3 military personnel. On the other hand, Ukraine believes the plane may have been carrying missiles for Russia's military system. But the United Nations says it's not in the position to verify the circumstances of the crash from Ukraine or Russia.
The United Nations is not in a position to verify these reports or the circumstances of the crash. What is clear is that the incident took place in the context of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and ongoing war. To avoid further escalation, we urge all concerned to refrain from actions, rhetoric, or allegations that could further fuel the already dangerous conflict. Mr. President, yesterday it was reported. In recent weeks, the scale and intensity of attacks against Ukraine have only grown, highlighting the dangerous trajectory of the war. Shelling and missile strikes on civilian areas continue to kill and maim civilians and cause massive destruction to critical infrastructure. The recent incident in the Belgorod region, with its claimed link to a planned prisoner exchange, reminds us of the plight of prisoners of war. We remain deeply concerned about their treatment. Since February 2022, the UN has interviewed over 280 Ukrainian POWs who returned from Russian captivity. Just in the past week, our colleagues in the Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine interviewed 31 prisoners of war who returned in early January. What we hear in these interviews is harrowing.
Russia's rush to call for a council meeting fits a now familiar pattern right out of the Russian playbook with which we are all familiar. Russia has repeatedly attempted to shift responsibility for the tragedies of this senseless war of choice as though it is the victim and not the aggressor. While we work to gather the facts and ascertain what happened, it bears repeating that the Kremlin bears full and ultimate responsibility for starting and continuing this war.
And the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, has been briefing journalists about the safety at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, saying the possibility of a nuclear disaster remains very real. Russian forces captured the plant in March 2022 following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and experts from the IAEA have been on the ground monitoring the plant since September 2022.
This last time did not last for too long. We had longer blackouts, which were much more concerning than this one. So now this was shorter, but it continues to occur. It is very difficult, going to the other point, to identify the exact reason of each one of those, because some of them may be caused by events taking place hundreds of kilometers away from the plants, which may be deliberate. I'm not saying it's just an unwitting result. The forces in place know very well which are the lines feeding the plant, and at this point, you know, in normal times, they used to have 6 high voltage lines and more or less the exact number of 330 kilowatt lines. Now we are operating with only 2, at sometimes 1. So we are walking on very, very thin ice. And the concern is as you know, high as the first day, because I was just telling the members of the Council that in this situation, you cannot say, well, there is a trend that things are stabilizing somehow, things are improving. I mean, you can have a good week and then you have a blackout. You can have a good week and then a drone, you know, aims at the plant. So it is an ongoing it is an ongoing situation which will only be in a better place when all of this stops.
Ecuador has destroyed 21.5 tons of cocaine, the largest drug bust in the country's history. The country's anti-drug authority made the seizure in the capital, Quito, where the cocaine was hidden in a rural farm. According to Ecuadorian authorities, the drug gangs were planning to transport the drugs in boats to cargo ships, leaving the ports to eventually reach Europe, Asia, and North America. Last week, authorities in Ecuador found more than 21 tons of cocaine hidden and stored on a pig farm. The country, which suffers from the influence of criminal gangs, has witnessed a wave of violence recently. Criminal gangs reportedly launched coordinated attacks all across the country. At least 20 people were reportedly killed during the unrest. In the United States, Alabama has carried out the first execution of convicted murderer Kenneth Smith with nitrogen gas, the first time the method of capital punishment has been used in the U.S. and anywhere else in the world. The 58-year-old was pronounced dead at 8:25 p.m. on Thursday at an Alabama prison after breathing pure nitrogen gas through a face mask to cause oxygen deprivation. The execution took about 22 minutes and was witnessed by his family. In November 2022, Alabama tried and failed to execute Mr. Smith by lethal injection. He was convicted in 1989 of murdering a preacher's wife, Elizabeth Sennett, in a killing for hire. However, his lawyers had argued the execution amounted to a form of cruel and unusual punishment banned under the U.S. Constitution. Our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, joins us now for more. Maria, what more do we know about the nitrogen gas execution on Smith and how it went down?
What we know is that, as you stated, this was an unprecedented type of execution. And to be very honest, we have not seen the number of executions as we had in previous years, most recently in the United States. But as you stated, this was the second attempt of execution for Mr. Smith. And so what we know is that this was what they believed to be, and as you stated, the lawyer said this was unconstitutional. But according to obviously the prison and the warden there and the courts in Alabama, this was a permissible way of execution.
And what informed the decision to use nitrogen gas, seeing that, you know, it's an unusual execution, as we said it before, is the first time it's being used in the U.S. and anywhere else in the world?
Well, what informed this decision was the fact that he had been tried and had been set for execution. And as you said, the first failed attempt. And so knowing that lethal injection is the most potent way for execution, and typically the way that is used, because we no longer use the electrical chair, as that has been deemed inhumane. And so at this time, you know, that was what they felt was best. I think that we are going to see court cases and lawsuits, whether it's from the family, as you said, the family was there to observe this execution, and so potentially the family could appeal this, and obviously there could be civil rights attorneys and law firms that appeal this issue.
And, you know, the first attempt to execute him, I don't know, why did that fail in the first place? Such that, you know, some are saying that this was just an attempt to use him as a lab rat, meaning anybody else on death row could have, you know, been exposed to the nitrogen gas execution method.
You're exactly correct. That is what's being stated by individuals, that this is potentially something we could see in the future. Obviously, lethal injection is potentially one that takes a bit longer. Lethal injection, there's a lot of different challenges there with the lethal injection. Sometimes people don't, obviously, the types of things that happen to individuals that may not execute immediately from the lethal injection and looking to see if there was another option, as the electrical chair has been banned. And so this is, I think, when you look at the politics of where this occurred, and you look at kind of the larger framework of kind of where the United States is as a country, I think this is going to become a much larger civil rights issue. Yes, we are aware that the individual was convicted of murder. And so that has potentially, in some states, the death penalty is an option for penalty for those type of convictions. So this is not going to go down easily, I don't believe. I think it's really going to depend upon the civil rights attorneys and how they decide to approach this moving forward.
Yes, and I was going to ask, many will wonder if this kind of, inhumane execution will continue going forward.
Well, I think that this is going to potentially open the door for that. But if attorneys and if families such as Mr. Smith's family begin to appeal this and potentially deem this as unconstitutional, and as you stated, if we look at around the world, this not being used as a form of execution, then potentially we could see this also being banned. But I think this is going to bring up a greater question around the death penalty. Because the death penalty has obviously been brought up before the courts before as being unconstitutional, and potentially looking at that being banned as a potential penalty for someone that obviously commits a crime and is convicted of murdering someone.
Right. Maria, thanks again for your time today. Right away from the United States, India is celebrating its 75th Republic Day with a colorful parade held in the capital, Delhi. French President Emmanuel Macron was the chief guest at the occasion. The celebrations mark the anniversary of India officially adopting its constitution, making it a sovereign republic. Part of the parade is a display of the country's cultural heritage as well as its military might. For the first time, an all-women contingent of Army, Air Force and the Navy also marched in the parade. Germany's train drivers are in the middle of a 6-day strike over working hours, the longest in the history of the country. Train drivers can be seen holding a protest outside Hamburg station. It's the second strike already this year, and it's causing travel chaos for millions of people in Europe's biggest economy.
Gehen wir. Letzte.
Feuer statt. Ich möchte euch auch kurz bitten, innezuhalten.
And for more, here's DW's Arthur Sullivan from Berlin. Arthur, 6 days is a very long time for a train strike. What's causing such discontent?
Yeah, so since Wednesday morning here in Germany, there's been this massively reduced train service all across the country, and it will remain the case until Monday. So 6 days, as you said, the longest strike in the history of Deutsche Bahn, which is Germany's state-owned national rail provider. Now, the company has been hit by several strikes for the best part of a year, and this strike by the drivers is their fourth in the space of a few months, and as you said, the second this year. Now, the fact that this one is so long just shows the extent to which negotiations between the drivers and Deutsche Bahn have broken down. Essentially, the drivers want to work less for the same pay. They currently work 38 hours per week, but they want that changed to a 35-hour working week, but without any change to their pay. Now, high inflation in Europe over the past 2 years has affected cost of living for millions of workers, in Germany and elsewhere. So it's an understandable complaint. But at the moment, the two sides really are at serious loggerheads. They aren't even negotiating right now. The union that represents the drivers has been very, very critical of Deutsche Bahn, saying that they're intransigent and they don't want to negotiate in those conditions, while Deutsche Bahn says the same of the union. But all the while, as the two sides bicker and blame each other, millions of people are affected, obviously, and also economists say that this is going to cost the German economy around 1 billion just for this strike alone.
So Deutsche Bahn, the German train operator, has been beset by many crises, a lot of crises in the recent years, far from the cliched image of German trains running on time and being a symbol of the country's efficiency. What's gone wrong?
Well, yeah, German trains, have been a symbol in the past of the country's reputation for efficiency. But now their consistently bad performance really is for many a reflection of a wider malaise in the country. Deutsche Bahn's trains are no longer known for being on time. They're known for being late. They're known for being overcrowded. And just to give you a stat on that, the most recent year we have figures, 2022, 1/3 of the country's trains were late. And that number is rising all the time. The company also has a huge debt pile of more than 30 billion euros. And then there's these strikes, which are causing obvious reputational damage and a lack of confidence in the company. And the fact that they have such a large debt pile means they can't exactly just throw money at the problem. So how did it all happen? Well, the simple answer is a lack of investment in infrastructure over many, many decades. Railways in Germany are at the limit. Germany runs a lot of trains on very old, very decrepit infrastructure, and it simply hasn't been investing in the tracks and in the bridges and the signals that are needed to maintain the service. And as well as that, the total length of the tracks have been reduced over the last 30 years. So the network is clogged. It's at full capacity. So when one train is late, there's a knock-on effect. And the company's well aware of these problems and readily acknowledges them.
Right. And is there a solution to this situation?
Well, in terms of the strike, no, things don't look good. The two sides are really barely talking at the moment. There's no meaningful negotiations even happening. Deutsche Bahn says that the union needs to change its position. The union says the same of Deutsche Bahn, accuses them of rejecting everything. So there's a lot of calls now coming in for the government to step in. Obviously, the government does own Deutsche Bahn. It has criticised the union for not negotiating, and they say that, arbitration may be needed, but there's no legal obligation for arbitration in Germany. So this really could go on and on. Public sympathy for the drivers doesn't appear to be very strong, according to some recent polls, and that may put pressure on the union to at least negotiate. But for now, it really is just a problem, a big, big problem for German commuters.
Well, thanks again, Arthur. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has praised the relationship between America and Angola, saying it's reaching new heights. Mr. Blinken said he had discussed the conflict between Rwanda and the DRC with Angolan president during his visit to Luanda on Thursday, adding that his continued efforts to de-escalate the tensions is good. The U.S. diplomacy chief also hailed Angola's participation in the Artemis Accords, a blueprint for space exploration cooperation among nations participating in NASA's lunar exploration plans.
At the White House in November, President Biden reaffirmed to President Lourenço that this is a historic moment for the partnership between the United States and Angola. Our relationship is stronger, it's more consequential, it's farther reaching than at any point in our 30-year friendship. And at this transformational moment, President Biden asked me to come to Luanda to help build on and accelerate our progress. The United States very much appreciates President Lourenço's continued efforts to de-escalate tensions between Rwanda and the DRC. We believe that the Luanda process, in tandem with the Nairobi process, is the best hope for enduring peace. Angola is trusted by all sides. President Lourenço's leadership is vital for a breakthrough. Today we had a chance to discuss that with the President, with the Foreign Minister, including meaningful steps that can be taken toward peace. We're thrilled that Angola is now the 33rd country to join the Artemis Accords. These are a set of practical principles to guide the safe, peaceful, and sustainable exploration of space for the benefit of all humankind. I had a chance to visit the new Science Museum today here in Luanda, which is a wonderful facility, and I can just see generations of young Angolans having their own horizons expanded. But I think it's also powerfully symbolic that our partnership, our relationship, is both literally as well as figuratively reaching new heights. We couldn't be more pleased with that and grateful for it.
Elsewhere, the Electoral Commission has confirmed that over 18,000 South Africans living abroad have already registered to vote, almost a third of them in the United Kingdom. The Commission is encouraging those who have not yet registered and can't reach foreign missions where they are living over the next 3 days to use the online registration portal instead. This also includes South Africans living in Ukraine, Israel and Sudan, where foreign missions have been temporarily closed for security reasons. Even though voting online is not possible, the Electoral Commission is still appealing to South Africans abroad to register, including where missions are currently closed.
Now, with regard to the questions that were asked by through both interventions relating to increasing the number of missions, you know, this is something that it's really important for us to emphasize. The IEC does not make the laws. The IEC takes the laws and implements them as fully as possible. And the law is what prescribes the fact that these are the places where people can vote. We don't at this stage have a possibility for voting online. As we have indicated in previous interactions with yourselves, the IEC has been looking at ways of using technology increasingly, and this is clearly something that we do need to take on board, not just for people who are living abroad, but for South Africans. But that is not an opportunity available to us now, and the law itself does not provide for that at the moment. The security situations in all three countries will abate, and we will have a situation where people can go to the missions. The reality is that if that happens and our date of elections has been proclaimed and people have not registered, then they still will not be able to vote. So I think the first thing is to really encourage people to register. I think the second thing also is that notwithstanding the security indications that we've had, we are still asking our colleagues in DIRCO to please communicate widely, to really make people aware of the online opportunities. And I think, again, through yourselves, we are asking you to do the same, because it really is important that we see those numbers, we see those people on our roll, and hopefully they will have the opportunity to vote in those countries.
The United Nations says over 500,000 people fleeing conflict in Sudan have arrived in neighboring South Sudan. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, a total of 516,658 people have been recorded to have crossed the border to South Sudan since fighting broke out in Sudan on the 15th of April, 2023. The agency indicated that about 81% of arrivals were South Sudan nationals and 18% were Sudanese refugees, adding that there was a substantial increase in the number of Sudanese refugees and asylum seekers who entered into South Sudan this month. The fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and rapid support forces shows no signs of abating despite peace talks by mediators. Mali's military rulers have announced the cancellation of a 2015 peace deal with separatist rebels after months of fighting in the West African nation. Military authorities said late on Thursday that the Algiers Accord had ended with immediate effect due to other signatories not keeping their commitments and hostility by chief mediator Algeria. In a speech broadcast on state television, the military government spokesperson, Colonel Abdoulaye Maiga, said there had been an increasing number of unfriendly acts, instances of hostility and interference in Mali's internal affairs by Algiers. Algeria had led efforts to restore peace to Mali after the signing of the so-called Algiers Accord between Bamako and armed groups predominantly made up of the semi-nomadic Tuareg ethnic group. Last month, Mali summoned the Algerian ambassador over interference and unfriendly acts related to the claims that the envoy held talks with Tuareg separatists without involving Bamako. Well, the DRC flood situation remains dire as nearly half of the country's 26 provinces are being impacted by severe flooding, including in the capital, Kinshasa. That's according to UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric, who was speaking to reporters in New York. He adds that Congolese authorities are reporting the need for emergency assistance in at least 400,000 households.
Flood situation remains dire, with nearly half of the country's 26 provinces being impacted by severe flooding. That includes the capital, Kinshasa. According to the Congolese authorities, more than 400,000 households need emergency assistance, including food, shelter, and healthcare support. The humanitarian coordinator in that country, Bruno Le Marquis, visited affected communities in Kinshasa and expressed deep concern over the precarious living conditions in these areas. Some families live in their flooded houses, increasing the risk, of course, of waterborne diseases, which could potentially overwhelm an already strained healthcare system. And in the east of the DRC, peacekeeping colleagues are continuing to protect the main supply route leading towards Goma and Sake, that's in North Kivu. They're also assisting the Congolese army to prevent the M23 armed group from advancing towards both Sake and Goma. Peacekeepers and Congolese armed forces are deployed in Maisi, Rutshuru, and Nyiragongo, patrolling key areas. As we mentioned before, the mission established a security perimeter near its Kinshasa base to help protect some 25,000 men, women, and children who are seeking shelter due to the prevailing insecurity we've been telling you about. The presence of peacekeepers also enables the delivery of humanitarian assistance to those who need it.
Globetrotter Pelumi Nubi has begun a daring 2-month solo trip from London, United Kingdom, all the way to Lagos, Nigeria. She departed England on Wednesday, crossing into France, and is now en route to Spain, then Morocco. Her journey will take her through the West Sahara Desert, Mauritania, and finally into West Africa through Senegal. Prior to embarking on this thrilling adventure, we had the opportunity to catch up with her and learn about the motivation driving her. Our London correspondent, Teniola Oyetayo, reports.
A direct flight from London to Lagos takes only around 6.5 hours. However, for Pelumi Nubi, this journey will be an extraordinary 2-month solo road trip by car. This Peugeot 107 has been customized for her journeys, featuring provisions for sleeping and dining. So when you open up the back bit, this has been replaced with a plank of wood, and you have the tap area, which also is connected to like a water tank, so I can do like my washing up, cooking happens here. I have a gas cooker right there, and then we have the sleeping area on this side. Preparations for the extensive expedition across Europe to West Africa have been meticulous, with safety being a top priority. I have done about a year preparation for this trip, whereby I've been able to speak to other people that have done similar trips. I've been able to kind of a lot of in-depth research to see what are the policies like, how I'll be able to cross, cost of it, the safest route. Again, I'm doing this solo, so I just have to make sure I'm, quite responsible in that way. Mentally, it's just kind of hyping myself, like really. Sometimes I'm like frightened, but most days I'm just like, this is doable, this is possible, and really that's the message I want to convey. The 29-year-old Globetrotter has already explored over 80 countries and undertaken several mini solo road trips, but this particular adventure stands out from the rest. This is very daring in comparison to others. I've definitely done many trials. This is longer in duration, more expensive in terms of like the cost of what it entails as a whole, and really just kind of like really daring, stepping out of my comfort zone compared to the other ones I've done in the past. I am traveling through 2 different continents, so that's another difference in compared to the other travels I've done previously. It's not just a drive. I really did want to experience each and every destination that I stop in. The total is about 17 countries, whereby I'm able to explore the whole some of the European countries, then cross into Morocco, and just keep making my way down west of Africa. Her aspiration is to not only showcase Africa, but also serve as an inspiration for young Black girls and to motivate others to break out of their comfort zones. Honestly, I just wanted to show that this kind of travel was very possible for someone that looks like me, and really inspiring the next generation of travelers that they can step out of their comfort zone and do incredible things. And one thing about traveling is that it extrapolates towards your life, and you can take those lessons and use it. So I really just want to inspire people to get on the road, to get adventurous, to step out of their comfort zone and showcase Africa in the ways that has not been done in a lot of mainland media, and just being able to say, this is my experiences.
Living with dyslexia, she also aims to highlight the advantages of solo travel. Solo road trips from London to Lagos are not unheard of, but Pelumi is set to make history as the first black female to undertake this remarkable trip. From London, Teniola Oyetayo, Channels Television.
Well, 4 new emperor penguin colonies have been identified in Antarctica, bringing the number of known nesting sites to 66. This discovery was made via satellite imagery, where scientists believe they now know the whereabouts of all the world's remaining breeding pairs. Emperor's courts, which are the largest species of penguin, standing at over 1 meters tall, mate, lay, hatch eggs, and then bring up their young in Antarctic winter on patches of frozen ice. They live in extreme conditions, collecting together during the height of the Antarctic winter to breed in distinct groupings. These colonies tend to be separated from each other by an average of about 150 miles. The 4 new emperor penguins are welcome news, even though they add just a few thousand extra individuals to what's estimated to be an overall population of about 550,000. And we end the program with a jaw-dropping display of a cat named Bowsy. The cat showed off some awesome skateboarding skills on the streets of China. This stunning video shows the cat jumping on the board, propelling itself along and balancing on its hind legs. The cat's trainer couldn't be more proud, as the videos are now becoming a social media sensation. In 2017, Australian cat Deja made it into the Guinness Book of Records with 24 different tricks in under a minute. Well, we're certainly rooting for Bowsy. An entertaining end to our show today and for the week. I'm Joke Rogers. Bye for now.